Hey everybody, my name is Matt Iovanni. I'm a partner at FullFunnel, and I'm going to show you how FullFunnel leveraging Clay can fix your database once and for all. This is a behind-the-scenes walkthrough of how we built a self-maintaining database quality agent. We run our data through this. This is how you folks should manage your data as well. So I want to reinforce who we are. We're an Elite Studio partner. Sales and marketing systems for B2B orgs is our primary objective. We are one of the first Clay Solutions partners. We're also one of the top 5 go-to-market Elite Studio partners on the planet. We use Clay as a data transformation layer. It allows us to incorporate AI agents, do enrichment on data, and then write back and forth between CRMs and marketing automation platforms. And what I want to cover today is I want to cover, number one, what the problem is with databases. We interact with companies all over the map, from organizations that are literally the top 50 largest companies on the planet down to early stage startups. Everyone's got this database problem. I want to show you how a database agent works. We're actually going to walk through a database agent in its entirety. And then if there's any time, we'll do a Q&A here. So let's just get right into the problem. What problem are we solving here? Number one, if you put data into a database, the stats on data decay would indicate that about 3 to 5% of the data that you import into a CRM system or marketing automation platform is going to decay about 3 to 5% every month, right? Contacts move, companies change, so on and so forth. Think about importing a list of the top 100 accounts that you want to target, and then 18 months at a 3 to 5% monthly decay rate, how messed up that data set is. Now, if you think about that, you think about us the last 10 years, what have we been doing? We've been pulling lists from ZoomInfo, from Apollo. We've just been pulling data into these CRM systems. They are decaying so much so that now 50% of your account managers, your account executives, your SDR, BDR roles, the labor, 50% of that labor cost is going into what is administration, data hygiene, manual research. And you have to understand that sales and marketing programs are effectively 3 things, right? They're the technology infrastructure you run your program on. It's the labor component, which is all the human capital that's involved in your sales and marketing program. And that is the number one cost for every sales and marketing program right now. And then number 2 or 3 rather is the process by which you take the technology and the people and what process you run, right? So when you think about fixing this database issue, what you're really trying to fix is the 50% of your labor budget that's being applied to non-sales and frankly nonsensical work, right? If you think about an organization that has $1 million invested in their sales and marketing team, which is not that much, guys. Think about your CMO and CRO and VP of sales or demands salaries. That's probably $1 million right there. Then we have all your SDRs, your BDRs. We're talking about $10, $20 million in bigger organizations that they're spending on their labor, right? Now, one of the fascinating things here is when people talk about Clay or really any of these AI tools, I'll sometimes hear oh, it can get really expensive. You can be in the 6 figures of investment. It's you're missing the fact that 500,000 of that $1 million labor pool is being wasted right now on stuff that makes no sense for them to be doing, right? If you actually invested, let's say $100,000, which would make people's minds explode out there on things like Clay, you can essentially save 400 grand in opportunity costs because your labor is not being wasted on these nonsensical tasks. The way I try to talk about AI interoperability in this net new world and sort of how you think about this is the old predictable revenue sales program is like a NASCAR, right? The new AI-enabled sales and marketing program is like a Formula One car. You don't race NASCAR cars on Formula One tracks. You have to reconfigure your mind that everything you do in this net new world is going to be different. So the data agent itself, it's always on. This is the big thing is when we saw Clay, we were like, oh my God, you can create always on workflow automation. And this has sort of led into these data agents. So when you think about what a data agent is handling, the first thing is, number one, continuous data validation. Number 2 is it's making sure that all of the accounts and contacts are being classified against your ICP and then enriched appropriately. Most importantly, though, you're using a lot of signal architecture to essentially make sure that the readiness scoring or their propensity to buy from you is constantly being evaluated on whatever time interval makes sense for your organization. That means that your sales team is going to focus on no manual list research, none of that. What they're going to be focused on is actually talking to prospects. Like your SDR role, the thing you pay them to do is talk to your prospects. And then anything that's pipeline generating activity, that's what we want our salespeople to be doing. So when you think about a data agent broadly, you want to think about the fact that like clay tables have usually these sort of three jobs, right? The first is a source, like bring data into a table from somewhere. Then you want to enrich that data, whether it's normalizing to a data standard, sort of dealing with whatever sort of enrichments that you want to deal with. The next and the third and most important part of this is the logic, right? Is like using agentic workflows inside of a table to make sure that these folks are ICP fits, that you're classifying them to a vertical, that you're doing signal architecture, using agents in a really thoughtful way to develop a sales readiness score. And then you want to be able to output that back into the CRM in a way that allows the sales and marketing program to do something productive with it. The example here I've talked about a lot is like, imagine like FullFunnel wants to go after the tech community. We take 969 NASDAQ companies and we boil it down to the 184 high probability accounts that we should go after. And that's without any human touching the list. Now, once you solve this problem, a couple things happen. First, inbound is reimagined. So if you think about inbound workflows now, a form is submitted, then you have the MQL designation, and then you have this like awful exchange between sales and marketing where the sales team has to go and interact with that lead. That's the friction point, like the leads are weak, the sales team's weak, yada, yada, yada. Now with a data agent workflow, you're essentially taking a form that's being submitted, that data sort of engine agentic workflow fires. And then what you have is an instantly scored account record or contact record. There's no more MQL status. By the time that thing is converted, we know the accounts fit, the score, and their readiness to buy from us. We're removing friction. We're accelerating revenue. The SDR is impacted because you're removing that entire 50% of manual sourcing, research, copy and paste CRM work. You're getting pre-qualified lists with pre-built contacts, with pre-scored accounts. So all of your time on the SDR front is spent on actual conversations with prospects with real information. Bonus round that you can also take things like Gong, or you can develop, your own agentic workflows using Teams or Zoom, so on and so forth, to then bring conversational intelligence into that engine as well to sort of constantly improve upon that. So let's go through this. We're actually going to build one live. So I'm going to show you essentially like how I think about architecture overviews on this, how I build these workflows, how I do the agents, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and move right into that. All right, so first and foremost, let's talk about the engine that I'm going to walk you through, right? This is just like a mock engine that I built to sort of showcase this, but I'm going to show you the actual problem that we have and that everyone has, right? So FullFunnel, over the course of the 13 years of being in business, we have aggregated 60,000 account records, right? Now, the reality is FullFunnel in any given month might have 100, 150 clients. We certainly don't have 60,000 of them. And so there's this reality that if we wanted to go out and try to sell, we need to somehow figure out of the 59,900 accounts that are not paying us this month, who should we focus on, right? That is pretty much everyone's problem. Especially once you reach a size like this, 60,000 account records, you certainly don't need to go add 10,000 net new account records in here. We have 60,000 viable businesses, most likely, that are in this ecosystem. So we're going to use Clay here to essentially do all the batch processing, the caching, etc. Inside of this Clay table, I want to first normalize all the information. Then I want to do a very quick alive check. I just want to ping the website, make sure that I understand if it's dead or not. So if you're working with a lot of small businesses, this is a real pain in the butt. Businesses cycle out. Think like restaurants. They go out of business all the time. And so what you want to do is create a gate just to make sure they're alive, right? Are they alive? And if they are, then you're essentially going to continue that workflow. So the first thing that I want to do, and again, I'm using this lucid chart because I try to explain to people all the time, go-to-market engineering is half architecture, which is what should we build, and then engineering, which is actually the building, testing, and deployment of that workflow. If you're going to be a go-to-market architect, the number one tool that you're going to use is a lucid chart or some lucid chart-like sort of technology. So I first want to bucket them, figure out like how big they are. The next is I'm going to run them through agents. So I like to label my agents as A, B, C, D, so on and so forth, so I can make sure that there is a connection between the architect and the engineer of what this agent is supposed to be accomplishing, and we can be very specific about that. So for full funnel, I want to know if an agent can tell me if there's open operations roles, right? How mature is the go-to-market function? Full funnel is a sales and marketing company, RevOps organization, go-to-market engineering company. I need to understand like what your maturity is, right? The next is that if you're owned by institutional capital, that's very interesting. Full Funnel is working with private equity companies all the time. So the reality is if you work for a PE shop, I need to know that because I likely have a contact at one of those PE organizations. Next is really interesting, executive churn. Like most people are going to invest in new things as executives are moving in and out of the company. So I just kind of want to like measure how churny it is over there. Then I have another agent that's going to go through and look at all their tech stack, so on and so forth. And then finally, I'm going to have an agent that looks at their go-to-market engineering awareness, all the cool stuff that Full Funnel does, like what we're walking you through here, sort of classified in go-to-market engineering. And as such, if you're aware of go-to-market engineering, it's usually a really good thing for me to be able to sell to you. So that's what this looks like. And then at the end, I'm then going to score everything. I build a weighted scoring rubric, and then I'm going to write everything back to our CRM. And so that's essentially how a database agent works. Now, let's go through and actually show you what this looks like in a working example. So real life example time, I pulled 500 accounts out of my CRM, out of that 60,000 pool at random. And what we did is we built a table. Now, remember, you're going to have a source where the information's coming from. You're going to have an enrichment to meet your data standard. That data standard is going to be what do you need inside of your CRM so all your records are consistent. Now, if you go back and look at what we were doing initially, we said, hey, we're going to go and bucket these things out by tiers. Great. So you can see here that this particular organization, we're bucketing them on like what type of tier for customer they are for us, trying to figure out essentially how we go about this. Now, you'll see here what we're going to do is that you're seeing the designation of Agent A, right? So Agent A here is going to be operations roles. So now we're going to get in here and actually have the agents going through and building out the operations roles. Agent B is all about ownership status. So this is all going to be about whether it's private, public, private equity backed, whatever it might look like. If they do have a PE backer, like what that looks like. Agent C, what is Agent C supposed to be doing? It's supposed to be measuring executive churn. So Agent C here, you can see is like looking at all the people that are associated with this company and then giving us a sense on whether or not there's high churn. Tech stack, what their CRM platform is, so on and so forth. Now, this is the important part here. At the end here, what we're going to do is after we've run Agent E, which is the go-to-market engineering presence, so on and so forth, we're then going to use an open AI model. We tend to use these models when we're doing scoring for some reason. They tend to work really well. And the reality is we build a weighted rubric. So it's essentially a weighted system inside of the table that is going to take my variables, weight them appropriately, and then build a score 0 out of 100. So you can see here in the fitment score, that's essentially where we're getting this fit score analysis. Now, what I've done just to like sort of prove this out is I've sorted the entire table by this fit score. But essentially, if you look at this, what I did is I just took 500 accounts that are sitting inside of our database, and I've run them through my data quality agent workflow process, which is an agentic workflow process. And now I am ending with a prioritized set of scores where at the very bottom here, you'd be able to see essentially like what the scores look like. And then at the top, you're going to see essentially the best score that we're going to get. Now, if you look at the output, and I try to really pay attention to this, is like most organizations use fields. Fields are linear and static data points. They'll build reporting off of those static data points. When we run this data workflow process, and the intervals when you run it are varied, right? If you have an inbound lead, you're going to run it immediately. If you're importing a lead list, you run it immediately. But what we usually recommend is that these are running every 6 to 12 months on all of your account records to keep everything clean. So in the event that you get to this point, the idea is that you have a structured summary that'll then write into your Salesforce, into your HubSpot. And the reason you do that is because what you're doing is creating a contextual data point. Like at this moment in time, this is what was going on with the company. Interestingly, for reporting, you can aggregate those like points in time or rings in the tree. And then you can build really in-depth contextual reporting, not requiring the use of specific fields. And so we really like to see this. And so you can see here that this particular organization is red hot here. And if I was to take the entire database I have of 60,000 contacts and use this data quality agentic workflow process to boil it down, maybe I get the top 100 accounts that meet my buying criteria out of 60,000, and then we hyper focus on those 100. Let's say that we could convert those 1 out of 3. That's 30 more accounts on a 100 account monthly narrative. That's a 30% growth. Now, we did this without any salespeople touching this. So again, it's the idea of trying to solve the problem of unallocated or misallocated labor spend and solving that through a technology workflow process that we call a database quality agent or a data engine. And then what we effectively do is that we shift cost structure from labor to technology, but we make the downstream labor application so much more effective. And that's really the beauty behind data agentic workflow process, the data engine, and why we are huge believers in Clay.